All right, folks, time to wrap this stuff up. Couple more important concepts to cover before we finish this first section in diversity in society. As I mentioned, prejudice is the thinking part of racism or sexism or discrimination or discrimination of inequality. And discrimination is the actual doing. It refers to the behavior and made to be defined as the unequal treatment of a person or persons based on group membership. Discrimination and prejudice do not necessarily occur together. Somebody could be prejudiced and still hire people that don't look like people or act like people that they would normally think of as equal. But a lot of times discrimination and prejudice and discrimination do go hand in hand. There's also ideological racism. Thinking about that chart, right? The individual side of things are prejudice, discrimination. The group, societal side was ideological racism, institutional discrimination. Ideological racism is a belief system or set of ideas that assert that a particular group is inferior and used to legitimize or rationalize the inferior status of that group. This is incorporated in the culture of society and can be passed on from generation to generation. Generally is passed on from generation to generation. You do not necessarily need prejudice to have ideological racism. The socialization processes can continue to produce ideological racist beliefs even without prejudice being exhibited. And the term ideological sexism is analogous to ideological racism, but is focusing on sexual differences. We'll use this to analyze patterns of inequality between males and females as we go through the course. And of course, ideological sexism is very much in the forefront of the social discussion at this moment with the Me Too movement and many of the charges being brought against people in power or people just in regular positions, males in regular positions, females in regular positions of power, and how they've used that to discriminate against those of the opposite sex. Institutionalized discrimination or patterns of unequal treatment based on a group membership, which is built into the institutions and daily operations of society. This can be obvious and overt, but it usually operates in more hidden and unintended ways. Individual level prejudice and discrimination and group level racism and institutional discrimination ultimately reinforce each other. These relationships are socially negotiated and sustain the respective positions of dominant and minority groups in the stratification system. So we made it up. The dominant group benefits, and they have a vested interest in keeping dominant minority relationships intact. And last but not least, we have to remember that this is not just about the United States. We need to think about the conversations that we have about the United States within the confines of the United States, but we also have to remember that they are impacted by global forces that may or may not be within our control. It's important to expand our perspectives beyond the experiences of just a single nation and recognize that the dynamics of intergroup relations in the United States are not unique. Group relations in the U.S. are shaped by global economic, social, and political forces, And those forces are complex interconnections between domestic and international levels of governance. Just like we are shaped by global and economic, social, and political forces, so too are other nations. And as we start to unpack immigration and the movement of people around the planet at this moment, we're really going to need to focus on the global forces that are constructing social inequality and forcing folks to leave their locations of origin.